You have found the Chauntee Pants Show.
People ask all the questions that box you in. To classify your life with the stroke of a pen. Take those old rules, crumple them, and throw them out. We're burning that box right now.
Hello, Shani here. Although I am most often recognized for my ridiculously comedic fashion and makeup tutorials on my social medias, I also have a deeper side. I have been learning, growing, and recovering so much in the last couple years, and I'm thrilled to bring you along on my journey as I continue to break the mold that I've been living in for far too long. I am so fortunate to have the privilege of interviewing some movers and shakers who are encouraging my healing process through sharing their own stories. I'm honored to bring these stories to you all in hopes that you too can learn, grow, and heal, and also to remind us all that we are not alone. Welcome to the Chauntee Pants Show.
Breakers, movers and shakers. Don't ever silence your voice. Dream makers, risk takers. Don't ever silence your voice.
My name is Chauntee Pitts. I actually currently reside in Fort Worth, Texas, on the cusp of Benbrook, but right in Fort Worth. I'm a teacher, and I grew up in Fort Worth, and then I moved away to Virginia for a while. I lived in Richmond, Virginia for 12 years, and then I moved back to Texas, and I've been here for a little over 2 years now.
Well, we will jump right in. We have stories going back to my very first interview that was on this podcast with Kayla. We kind of, the three of us have similar backgrounds.
Yep.
So this is really cool. I don't know you well. I'm quite a bit older than you. And so I'm really excited to kind of see your story. And we grew up in the same religious cult. And so I just find it so fascinating to hear other people's perspective, what they experienced, because I do feel like there's such a spectrum of what we all experienced. And it was all, very different and unique kind of in each area. I, of course, grew up in California, and we called them assemblies. And so I was in the Sacramento assembly, and you grew up in Texas. So you were in
the Fort Worth
Texas,
or the
Fort
Texas
Worth
assembly. It was all the same because there's only one here. So yeah.
Right. You guys were the big one. We were always so excited if we got to go visit you guys.
It was huge.
It was so huge. So we come from the same type beliefs and background, but obviously grew up in different areas. And we were just talking about, we're not even sure if we've ever met in life. There is a chance we did, because we did have big camps where we would all get together. So our paths may have crossed, but as far as we know, we may never have met in actual real life. So
and I've been friends with relatives of yours. I think that's part of it too. And your husband, I'm positive I've spoken to him at least once in my life.
Isn't that crazy? It's such a weird, twisted, everything. And everyone knows everyone.
Right.
Oh yeah. And even if we never have met, all the names.
Right.
Everyone, because we were all so integrated in each other's lives.
Right.
That even if you didn't meet them, you would know if they did something bad.
Right.
Every assembly knew
Everybody
about it.
knew about you. That's for sure. That is absolutely accurate.
Yes. I always felt like our family had a very nice, deep file in our particular leader's office file cabinet, because
I'm sure y'all were in the bad assembly, so I know y'all were the wild ones.
Oh boy, were we ever. We were crazy. So anyway, let's talk a little bit about your childhood, how you grew up, and you were born into this. And so you can kind of talk there and kind of give us a little rundown of your childhood.
So actually I came to the assembly with my mom being pregnant with me. So that's when my parents came. So my two older sisters were children, little. I mean, my older sister right above me was 2.5 years older than me. So my parents were living in Mississippi at the time, actually. And they met a family there, and they introduced my parents to the group, I guess is what we call it. And then my dad was actually recently graduated from college with a theology degree. And so he was searching for what he wanted to be truth. And he was very desperate to protect his children from, he grew up really rough. And so he latched on and it was oh, I definitely want this because it feels safe. It feels like I can protect my girls from all the evil of the world. And so he he moved, much to my mom's chagrin. She was not ready for it. So yeah, they moved, and they actually went straight to a gathering when they first arrived at the Langford's house, like the grandparents. And so they were going in, and then that was, it was so crazy. So that was my mom's first shock, is getting to walk into that and meeting everybody for the first time. But yeah,
but
so
they stayed.
Right, I know. She didn't have any say so, or I don't think they would. So yeah, but then I was born in Grand Prairie, Texas, which is right down the road from Fort Worth, and raised in Crowley. And right down the road, I actually was living 5 minutes from the meeting hall. So we were very, very close. My dad bought a big piece of land eventually, and we sold off to people around us. So we were surrounded by people from the group on every side of us. Right. Yeah. It was very, there was a lot of those here in Texas, I feel like, compared to other areas. People would buy big blocks of land and then sell off, and then it just became one big like neighborhood, I guess. Commune. I mean, really, it was kind of like that. So I grew up in Crowley. I was, of course, homeschooled, and I had 3 sisters. I was number 3 out of 4. Okay. So I was sort of in the weird middle, kind of, because my older sisters were 18 months apart. So
like you were homeschooled. So you never really had an outside education.
No. And actually, when I decided to go to college, I had a diploma. Don't get it twisted. There was a diploma. Was it my work that was done to get the diploma? Absolutely not. So when I decided to go to college, it was pretty scary when I realized they told me that I had an 8th grade education. So it was it's really crazy. So especially in math, I was very low. I would say, 7th grade math. Which is crazy because that's part of my job now. Who would have thought that I would be teaching that eventually? But so it was, my mom did not want to homeschool. Okay. My dad was just following the rules because he was afraid of he didn't want anyone bothering us. That was really a lot of it for him, is like, I just want people to leave us alone. So whatever they say, we're just going to do. And that way no one bothers us. Okay. So we were homeschooled. My mom taught us most of our younger years. And then when we started getting into upper grades, she was like, I don't know what to do with this. So my dad actually got Bob Jones, like the satellite. I don't remember if you know, they had a satellite where they would put it on your house and you could get feed into your house to watch live, or you could record it, depending on what time it was.
Oh, we were not that fortunate.
Well, this is the thing. We only had it for probably, I would say, I was in 8th grade at the time. And I started feeling like I was learning for the first time, like actually learning. And someone said something about the religion side of it. And so my dad had to get rid of it. And so then we just got it ripped from underneath us, which was a huge impact at that age. 8th grade is already bad enough without the extra scoop of whatever they threw at you. So that was a big part of when like things started to go pretty downhill for me from that point. Cause it was like, I felt like everything that I finally felt like was going well just was gone.
Got taken away. And that was probably kind of your first source of kind of like outside information and things away from the group. Because talk a little bit about like what your day-to-day life was when you're being homeschooled. And I mean, because I, of course, have my perspective on how it was for us, but like, did you have friendships outside of the group? Was your friendships all within it? How was that?
No, definitely no friendships outside of it. And in fact, we have family. I mean, my parents' family is not a part of the group. We were not allowed to associate with them. My grandparents could come see us like once a year or so, maybe that. And my aunts, I now have a relationship with my aunts for the first time. It's been building, and now like I actually get to talk to them on the phone, and like we actually get to connect, and it's really special. I actually took my first trip with my aunt this year in my whole life. And we went to California, and we got to like just hang out, and it was really, really impactful because you didn't have that. So our family was, if you know us at all, our family was an open door policy situation where at any time of day, someone could show up at our house to hang out, to come, to talk to my dad, to get like advice. Cause my parents were really up there in the views of others. At one point, it did go crashing down at some point. But
you
at that point,
and forget.
Right. Yep. When your daughters start giving any type of problems, we got to cut you off. Which my little sister was a wild one. So,
perfect.
Yeah, gotta love her.
Yes, you owe her.
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, so our house was always full of people. I mean,
and you're talking real quick. Sorry. You're talking people from the group, not open door to anyone, but specific to people
just
within
people
the group.
For the group. I mean, our house was the popular place for gatherings. We had a volleyball court and we had a foosball table and ping pong. I mean, it was a hangout. So people were coming and going. And we also had an A-frame behind our house that we built before we built our big house. And it was always occupied. At all times with somebody. In fact, a family with a bunch of kids lived there for a long time. And so it was just nonstop activity. Wow. You couldn't go outside without somebody being in your backyard, which was really, really stressful at times when you feel like you can't live your life. Right. I actually was laying out on the roof because we had a tin roof and someone happened to come out and see me. And there was a huge to-do about me being on the roof, getting my skin tan. I guess that was a shameful situation. I don't know.
Put that one right in your file there for the Pitts family.
Right. Yeah, I'm sure that was a huge deal, but it turned into something my dad had to put out that fire. But so our house was constantly going. I feel like the learning part of our schooling, for homeschool, was, a couple hours. And then it was we got to go. We have things to do. I was always having to babysit for people. I feel like my life was spent being told, go here, help them, help this mother, help this mother. So at age 16, I was working almost every day, honestly, going in and babysitting. And I actually ended up homeschooling kids at 16 for other people in the group. And so that was a huge deal. I had no idea what I was doing. And I had literally children that I was responsible for their education and also their well-being because I was left alone. I was left alone to take care of them and to feed them and to make sure that the other ones, because I had younger siblings that would stay as well. So I was teaching, taking care of little kids, and cooking and cleaning and whatever else I had to do. I was basically a mom. I was thrown into it.
Oh,
yeah, all for free, most of it. So that was also a big part of it, right? There's a couple of them that I'm still friends with now, the parents, and I'm like, hey, when am I going to get this pay that I know you owe me? So
the back payments there.
Right. Hello. Do you know how much I'm worth now? But yeah, that was a huge deal because I felt like that responsibility that was on my shoulders was not allowing me to be any control of my life. No control at all. And I was constantly being compared to my siblings when it came to looks and things like that. And it just started to develop into this ugly situation where I was depressed. I was literally in this bad spot with my relationship, even with food and things like that. And that's when an eating disorder just took over. It was a very huge transition to all of a sudden it was like, hey, if everyone has to control me at all times, there's one thing you cannot make me do. And that's eat. And of course I was overweight at the time. So then it was like, hey, I can justify this. What are you going to do about it? And then I was given lots of advice on, you need to do this diet. You should try this. And the whole atmosphere, which I don't know how it was in California, but here there was a huge body image issue with women.
Yeah.
I feel like it probably wasn't any different there.
Yeah. I do feel like it was more that way in Texas and more. I remember going and thinking everyone dressed very nice in Texas. I feel like it was more formal. And so I always felt very underdressed in my denim skirt, and so I do remember that. I know, the best thing ever. Oh my gosh. But I could see it being a little bit more prevalent there when you're saying that. And I'm picturing even some people today and I'm like, oh yeah, they still have that.
Yeah.
I could totally see that.
Yeah, it was definitely something as, when you already are struggling with your looks, you do naturally anyways as a person. Everybody struggles with how they look. But then to be fed, your sister, which, that's something that we've talked about so much. My grandma had an eating disorder and then it was passed down to my mom and to now my sisters, and everyone struggled with food. It was a struggle. It was just a struggle. And I mean, it's something that I wanted to break that from, and my sisters definitely did. It was really neat to see them now with children and their daughters seeing that's not what it is about anymore.
I love that.
Which is, it's a huge, huge thing for me to see and know that my nieces are not going to have to carry that.
Yes.
Which is really awesome. But our family moved from Texas to Virginia after my older two sisters got married. Okay. I was around 20, I think.
Okay.
And I was actually working at a school as an assistant pre-K teacher in the public school system, and they were paying for me to go to college. So it was on the very DL situation.
Oh,
because of course, like, you know, if anyone found out that I was getting educated, shut it down. Like, no way. And I was feeling really at a good place. And then my dad got the transfer and they were packing up to leave and everyone was thinking about what to do. And I said, I don't want to go. I am well established here. And I was told, if you do not move, and this was not from my parents, this was from the men or whatever we call them. Yes.
Yes.
We always call them the men. I don't know what y'all
I know. Same. Yeah. We, even now it's like, I don't know what,
I don't know what to call
leadership.
Them.
Yeah.
But they told me, if you choose to stay, you will never be desirable to any man because no one wants an independent woman. And so I was like, cool. So now I have to decide, do I want to be single for the rest of my life? Or do I want to move with my family? But it was a really tough situation. And like my mind was in a bad place anyways, because I was already struggling with an eating disorder and I was struggling with depression. And it was like, I don't know what to do. And I would have like major breakdowns for little decisions like, which parent do you want to jump in the car with to go somewhere? Because I was in such a bad headspace that I would just like meltdowns. It was ridiculous. But it was just because A, I wasn't feeding my body well, and B, I was literally so depressed and it wasn't being acknowledged and I wasn't getting the help I needed. Which, you know, you don't say that you're depressed because that just means you're not trusting God, right? Because that's all that is. And if you trusted God more, and if you loved God more, and if you were giving more to others, then you wouldn't feel that way.
But only others within the group.
Of course. No, not anyone outside. Not anyone not in the group, you know, the world, because that's what that was. If you weren't in the group, you were the world. I don't care whether you loved God or not. That's that.
Right. Oh, yeah.
It doesn't matter. So when I moved to Virginia, that's when it got really bad for me. As far as like, I was on the verge of death. I was in and out of the hospital. There was a couple of attempted suicides. It was definitely a dark, dark place. And people were love to give you advice, of course, that were not even people who had any knowledge of the issues, were not educated to understand how the mind is working. But for me, I always tell people the eating disorder was like, you take your hand and you cover your eyes and you can't see anything. And you don't realize that like, if you just moved your hand, like you could see. If you just moved your hand, you would know the truth. But in the moment, it was just, it didn't matter. And I also I was cutting really bad. I mean, I was in a really, really dark spot. And then I felt like in Virginia where I was, they were trying to figure out how to help me and save me, in which I got pulled out of home, moved into another people's home, and then pulled out of there, moved here because they were trying to put me in a place they thought would help solve the issue. Yeah. Because they literally said, it's your parents. Like they're not being parents to you. That's why you're in that spot. But I think what really pushed them over the edge to let me go eventually to a rehab facility was when I was literally, the last attempted suicide was in a really bad place. They were like, if she does actually end up getting where she actually ends her life, then people are going to start looking. Right. And the moment people start looking, that's when we have a problem.
Yes.
And so, that was when they started looking for something that was good enough for them to not feel uncomfortable with me going. Now, there were stipulations like the leader of the group in Richmond had to have access to me at any time. And they had a lot of that they had to be okay with the fact that they could come visit me, or they could call, they could connect, they could keep checking in. They had access to any counseling information. So
And here at this point, you're over 20 years old.
Oh, for sure. I was 23.
Oh,
24,
my
maybe
gosh.
23.
And they still were holding over that control. Or
for sure. And because I was a single girl, and anytime you're a single girl, you cannot be someone of authority, even in your own life.
Right.
Unless there's a man over you, you have no say.
Right.
And so when I went there, it was, I always laugh because I'm still connected with a lot of the people who were there with me. A lot of the women. It was a religious environment. It was a church that, like, it was connected. There was a house here, there was a community center, and a church that were all connected to one church. It was a really big facility in Indiana. So I moved all the way to Indiana to do this.
Wow.
I was there for 6 months. 6 months, which was a long time to drop your life and go. And especially when you're, single and you still have bills to pay, and everything was just, but when I got there, I was made fun of a little bit because they were like, why are you so happy to be at rehab? But for me, it was like a vacation. I had full reign, and I didn't. I mean, my schedule was planned for me. My eating was planned for me. I literally had no say-so in what happened between the moment I woke up to the moment I went to bed, but I still felt like I was free. And it was so weird. And I was also surrounded by women who loved God, that were wearing pants and cut their hair and wore makeup and watched movies and all these things that we weren't allowed to do. Right. And I was like, how does it make sense that these women are speaking truth into my life and helping change me and helping me believe the truth about myself and the truth about God? But they're wearing pants.
Right. They should be wrong. They shouldn't have that knowledge, or, they're not right with God.
Exactly. And that was something that was, the first day that because we had to go to the church on Sundays because that was part of the requirement. And I literally would not get up off the stairs because I was just crying uncontrollably because I said, I know the moment I walk into that church that I'm sinning against God. This is something so impactful. Because I was like, this is a Baptist church. I can't go to a Baptist church. That is almost like walking into like a strip club in my head. Like, that's how bad it was. And I had to be talked down because they were like, you have to go. I mean, it was insane. It was.
Now, were you able to, with the, this group that was helping you, this facility, were you able to open up to them? Did it take a while to say, like, why you were so terrified of going into the church? Did they get that side of you eventually?
To a certain extent, because when I did leave the facility, I went right back to where I came from. There was a change in me that happened that never went back. And that was one thing. But I will say there were things that they said to me that I was like, what? Wait, that's what that means? Or that's what the Bible really means for that? And at one verse that I felt like was one of the most changed, like when I heard it from them, it changed my whole perspective of how I was being raised or how things were in the group, because they were talking about the Pharisees and how they always were cleaning the outside, but like, you hypocrite, the inside is so dirty. And I had not ever thought about it like that, because it was about works. It was about how you looked. It was about works. That was it. You could be the worst person inside and think the worst things about people, as long as you were looking right and ministering to the world in how you looked, then that was enough.
Yeah.
And I remember that moment so clearly because I was like, hold up. Now you're telling me something that actually makes sense to me.
Right.
But also they taught me about what love actually meant. Because, at least for me, my understanding of like God in general was about fear. You do this because you do not want to upset God. You do not want to upset the men. You do not want to upset the people around you in the group. Like that was, I feel like the basis of our cult, in my opinion, was based on fear. That's it. You get them to a place of fear, and you cannot move from that. And even if you do see other things, you're afraid to go outside of it, because anything outside of it is wrong because of the fear we were taught. I think that kept us contained. That kept us from veering at all and trying to understand anything.
Right.
And so when I was told while I was there at the facility, like I was told, hey, actually, Chauntee, God is about love. Like these are the things he's about. And they laid out just like the love story of God. And I was not ready for it. I was not ready for the truth that was revealed to me. And that was one of the biggest things that changed my perspective of who I was.
Wow.
And I literally crumbled. I mean, like physically crumbled to the ground and then like in convulsive crying, just like, what is this? Where has this been all my life? I feel like I wouldn't be here today if it weren't for what I felt that I was not ever good enough.
Right.
But then also to say like the verse about knitting me together in my mother's womb, I will praise you for I'm fearfully and wonderfully made. And I got to that point where I was like, how dare I say I'm not actually creator, person who made me who I am. I'm not fearfully and wonderfully made. I'm flawed to that. And I understand human nature is flawed, but to be believing that nothing I do is good enough because I'm not good enough. I was never told that wasn't true. So that was just what it was. And it wasn't like my parents definitely loved me. My dad was very much a loving father. Actually to the point of people questioning who he was. I mean, he literally had been accused of stuff that was ridiculous because of his love for his daughters.
Oh my gosh.
Because of course, any type of love that's unhealthy or whatever. So,
right.
But yeah, I think that was a huge part. But also when I look back on that time, my family came to visit me and they were able to see. I was very cut off from my family also. I was isolated from them because I was told they were part of the issue. So I had no relationship at all with them. It was almost non-existent. And also I had such awful feelings towards them because of what I was told. So
of course. Yeah.
That was huge. But when they came to visit me, that's when my family actually started to break out. My parents left the cult not long after me getting home from rehab. They weren't fully out because they didn't want to lose their children. And that was a big part for them. My dad said, I can't leave without my kids. Yeah. And my mom was 100% on board. Like, we can't live without our children. And all of my sisters were married into the cult. So,
oh my God.
And some of them married into ministers' sons. So like, it was a bad situation.
Like, how do we get them out of there?
Right. So yeah, I would say that was, whenever I talk about my eating disorder and my cutting and just like that deep, dark depression, I always say like, while it was horrible and while I would never wish it on anyone, that's the moment that my family was changed forever. And so I'm glad that could be used for something that ended up being positive, because now my family, I literally cannot imagine not having them in my life. We are close-knit beyond anything I ever believed we could have. So that to me is worth it. Like, sure, it was terrible. Sure, I would never want to go back to that. But coming out of that and realizing that like that's what made the difference, I'm okay with that. I'll accept that.
Yeah. Well, and so all of your sisters are out with their spouses out of the cult. Okay. Oh, that makes me so happy. Oh, that's so amazing. Now, do they still live there, or are they in Texas? Where are they all located now?
My oldest sister lives in Kansas.
Okay.
She's a social worker in Kansas, and she went to KU. All of my family is very much involved in the community. So then my older sister right above me, so there's two above me and then me, then the little one, my sister Anya, who's right above me, she is a musician, and she and her husband live in Richmond. She's literally like a pianist beyond what you could imagine. Like, she plays for live musicals and things like that. She's so cool. Amazing. And her husband is a computer scientist. Their children are very incredibly intelligent. So it's fun to watch that happening. And my little sister, actually, we're leaving for Florida on Sunday to celebrate her graduating from nursing school.
Oh, how exciting.
Right. She had 2 kids while she was going to nursing school and graduated magna cum laude, like insane.
Wow.
So we're going to celebrate her because she really worked hard. She's going to be a trauma ER nurse. So,
oh my gosh.
Like I said, my family's very involved in the giving back of who we are. So, which is awesome.
How neat. Yeah. That's just, I love here. And that's what I love so much about all of our story, or so many stories of people that have gotten out of these type of groups and situations, is looking, like even what you just said is just, it really blows my mind about saying, yes, you would never wish, that anyone would have to go through that, but almost like, oh, it was worth that sacrifice to see where my family is now. And I don't know if you listened to my interview with Kayla, or I know you know her story. Yes. And she said the same thing about her health issues. And here's this woman that's literally on her deathbed.
Right.
And she said, I wouldn't change it, because at 14 years old, I had to go to the hospital, and it was the first time her family was exposed to other people out in the real world that were not terrible like we were all taught. And I just love that. It's like, I don't know, like you said, it's worth that sacrifice maybe of those really stressful times to get on the other side of things and realize, the hope and faith, the freedom that there is. And so I don't know, when you were saying that about your story and about it being worth it, that's all I could think about was Kayla saying the exact same thing. And it's just,
I think there's a lot of people that feel that way too, because it's through that roughest part is when people start to see the truth about what was going on.
Right.
But when I moved back to the assembly, that's when I ended up moving in with a minister there. And that's when that my life turned upside down, because I was being very controlled, very much because of me being in a very vulnerable place of being in a bubble and then being back. I was basically back into the controlled situation. And it was a really trauma situation for me. I mean, there was some physical abuse, there was mental abuse, there was all of that happening to try to keep me controlled, because I had that belief outside of what I had believed. Now, and knowing the truth more, I felt like I was a threat almost. I felt like that's really what it was.
Oh, yeah.
And there was a lot of suspicion about the things that were going on. It was very private between me and him. But now I will say, like, I was starting to get out, and it was still happening, and there was still a lot of control, and I was reliant on him for everything. I'm talking about submitting my weekly schedules, and like what I was going to eat the whole week had to be turned in and approved. I couldn't veer from it. I couldn't visit friends unless I had it on the schedule. Like, it was very controlled.
Oh my gosh.
And it was super traumatic to come back to that. But the thing is about it is that when you're in such a headspace of, I just want to be right for once in my life. I want to stay healthy. I want to be in a good place. And I'm so desperate to be right. I don't care what it takes. And that's where I was. I don't care what it takes. I'm willing to do anything to be right, to be good, to be a person that's desirable. And that was part of my issue in that moment too. It's just like, okay, if that's what it takes, I'm in. I'll do it, whatever it is. And that was a really, I mean, that was almost 7 years of that.
After you got out of the facility, you were still with him in that environment for 7 years.
Yes. That was when I came back. 7 years of, that. I mean, physically exhausted from it was basically like a child situation where I was made to be back to a childhood, because a big part of it was me being told you weren't raised correctly, you weren't disciplined correctly, and you need to be disciplined correctly in order to get beyond it. And it became like a physical discipline situation. At first it was not, and then it turned into that, and it was just intense. There were times when it was just multiple times a week, and sometimes it would go a month and there would not be anything. And then it was like, I broke a rule. Now you have to get punished. Like it became this huge monster of a situation, but no one else knew about it. And I think that was a part of it that I don't know that there was that many people that would be okay with it, but where it was just like, he knows what he's doing. I trust him. Right. I've been made to trust him. And so I'm willing to do what it takes. And if that's it, then that's it. And I know I'm a super rebel, and I still am. So, but I think that was also part of it. But even like Kayla's dad told me that he noticed something was off, and that at one point he was saying, I almost hired like a private investigator to follow because I felt like something was wrong.
Oh my gosh. And were they out of the group before you were for quite a while, or was it about the same?
No, I feel like I was out before them.
Okay.
It was
so
a little
this is
bit
when he's
staggered.
in the group that he's noticing this.
Yes. Oh, yes. He was very much. He was still kind of looked at as someone who was higher up. Yeah. And he was like, I know something was wrong. My family didn't know because I didn't have a relationship with him.
Right.
And then I did get to go to college eventually, and that was still happening during college. But it was really at the moment of when I graduated. And, you know, when you're in school, I don't know if you've been to school or you know people who have or whatever. In college, you don't have a life. You really don't. I was working 60 hours a week. I was going to school full time. I did not have a chance to breathe. And so none of that, what was really happening to me, was evident. And so when I graduated, I'll never forget, because it was December 2016, I graduated with a bachelor's degree. Which was super exciting. I worked really hard to get to that point, and I knew that that's what I wanted to do with my life. But I was on the phone with him, and he said, and I said, I'm really bothered by everything, and I really think I need to talk to my family about it, because I was starting to develop a relationship with them. And he was saying, no, that's not what we agreed to. If you need help, then we can go to a counselor together. That's an option, but you promise not to say anything. This was an agreement that we both did. And I will say that I did, I will say I did agree to it because I wanted to be right. So I'm going to put that out there and make sure that you know that it's I knew that was going to happen to me. And I said, okay, that if that's what it takes, I'm willing. But again, I was in a very vulnerable place in my head, and I believed that that's what it was going to take. I believed, because I had no option but to believe that was where I was. But
that's not to fault you either, because someone that is that powerful and has that much power over you is trying to get you to agree to something and make it be okay for them to carry out this abuse. Right. And so even though you are wanting to do the right thing and internally that's what you're going with, it still does not make it okay for them, whether you're an adult or a child or anything. It is manipulating you into, like you said, agreeing to have this happen to you. You know, you felt, like you said, that you were doing the right thing. Yeah. So that's just disgusting.
I also had to sign a contract thing of rules. So I signed a rule contract that was like, these are the expectations of you. These are the things you cannot do. These are the things you can do. And there were things like as basic. And when I mean basic, I mean very basic, like these are the types of hats you can't wear. That's those were part of the rules. You can't be on social. And understand, I was, 25, 26 up until I wasn't a child, but I had to follow the rules of when I went to the library, I could only get this much out. It couldn't be these things. It had to be these things. It had to be approved. And again, if I wanted to go to coffee with someone, even someone from the group, I had to get approval if it wasn't on the schedule. I had to have everything, and I had to turn in devotionals daily to him so that he could see that what I was doing, how I was working through whatever I was studying or whatever. So I feel like a lot of it had to do with the fact that I knew too much.
Yeah.
I mean, I hate to say that, but that's really how it feels. And I can't, of course, speak on that officially, but that's how it felt. But the moment that I broke that chain was when we were talking, and I talked about telling my family, and I was like, I feel in a really rough spot because I feel like what is happening is not okay. And it's the first time that I feel that I can feel it. Like, this is not okay. Something's wrong. And that's when he told me, well, you can't act like that didn't work, because look at where you are. Like, you just graduated from college. And that was literally, and I'm not going to cuss on here, but I will say, I said basically, like, screw you. Yeah. And hung up. Yeah. And that was it. because the moment he takes credit for the work that was put into my education, that's where things changed in my head. And then that's when I was at my sister's house and I went inside and I said, I got to tell y'all something. And it was probably like one of the hardest moments is telling my family. And of course, like I don't tell all the details because it's a lot. No one needs to have that in their heads, but just like for my family to know that this is something that was happening to me. I waited a long time to tell my dad because I was worried about what he might do.
Yeah.
Because my dad came from a very rough childhood. I mean, he was in a gang like as a child because he had to. So he's tough. That's what I'll say. Yeah. My dad is a very tough man. And when it comes to his children, he has no hesitation. So I was honestly very scared about what would happen. But my brother-in-laws were the ones who actually floored me the most. And that was definitely a moment for me that I realized that they were just as much a family to me as my sisters were because they came out of nowhere, like right by my side, were ready to do whatever it took. And, which, my sisters had to go through their own emotional processing. But my brother-in-laws, they stepped up, man. They were they were in the fight and they stayed in the fight. And now they are like my brothers to me. Like I couldn't do life without them. So it was really neat to watch that happen and see a relationship change for me, like with my brother-in-laws and where I was with them. And just seeing, that support that I didn't think I was going to get, because I'm talking about someone who's well looked at, I'm talking about someone who, people respected, but at that point they were out. My family was out.
Okay.
I was still, like most people were out. That was the big split happened in Virginia. Right. I mean, everywhere, I think probably.
Right. We all experienced it. Yes.
The big split happened. And that was when it was after that had happened when I talked about it. But okay. It was a crazy time because and then you have to process that. I was really afraid because he knew where I worked, he knew where I lived, and I wasn't sure if there was going to be a retaliation. So there was some of that. And then I had all these people out of nowhere calling me, asking for details, asking for, well, what happened? What was this? Well, what about this? Well, what did you do? And again, I take responsibility for my own actions. I am not going to sit on the seat of victimhood because that's not a place to be at. I'm very responsible for my decisions and where I am. And of course, trauma happens to us and it's a horrible thing. And as a teacher, I get to deal with that on a daily basis with my students. But I actually understand now that feeling of being in a spot of being afraid to talk about it. But just to rise above it, it takes an effort. And I'm not going to say that was like 1 year and I'm good to go. Right.
No.
But it was a process. And I said, I'm not going to sit in anger. You can see I'm very comfortable talking about it because it's not something to me that is like controlling me. It's just not.
It did for long enough.
Yeah, it's not. And I was like, I'm letting that go. I'm moving on with my life. I'm going to pursue what I love with my career. And I graduate in December with a master's degree.
That's
I'm
so exciting.
I'm thriving. And I have my dream job. I mean, I'm in a really good spot. And
that is so awesome.
And in my job and in my life, I feel very content and very happy. And again, the bad stuff that happened was horrible and awful, and I don't wish it on anyone. But the rewards that I've reaped from pushing through that and rising above and saying, I'm not a victim. I'm not. You're not going to have ownership over me. And I am releasing you from whoever it is, from everything that has happened, whether it's the ministers or the one person or whoever it is. It's like, if you sit in that and that controls you, your life is at a standstill.
Yeah.
You can't go anywhere. You have to be okay with the fact that it's not fair. It was wrong. It was horrible. I mean, and there's so much tragedy from it, but also look at us now. Right. And the good that it has done for me as a teacher, like I get to be this person for these kids that other people haven't understood how to do.
Right.
I understand.
Truly get it.
Right. Yeah. And I know the emotions and the needs and the feelings, and I can give it to them. If I didn't have this, I wouldn't be able to do what I do. I use it as much as I can on a daily basis of like, hey, I know how you're feeling. kids who are in a dark spot, who are contemplating suicide, like I'm able to come alongside of them and say, let me tell you about what happened with me. Let me tell you what I did to help. Here's some things that I know work and don't work when it comes to my life. What can I do? Where do I need to be to help support you? And that's what it's about, right? Is using what we've been through to better the lives of others. And that's when you realize that it was worth it to impact and help other people from having to experience that.
Right.
I
think that's it is, and it's so valuable. And I just commend you for doing this, because you truly are using a terrible situation and you're using it for good now. And I'm sure I've seen people from our past that are at that stuck place of the anger is still so and I mean, it's justified. Like I do believe it's justified, but until I believe in therapy. I believe in getting real help, because we never had that. And so when I see people in that stuck place, I'm like, reach out for help. Like, it's so important to get the help that we were never able to have when we should have, when we were younger. And so now in adult, and I've done a ton in the last 2 years on myself, 2.5 years now. And I am the happiest I've ever been in my life. Our marriage is the best it's ever been. And we've had some rough things happen through our marriage. And so to be able to look now and say, oh, this is what happens when you truly heal from a traumatic situation, because we did that. We got out and you think, oh, we're good. We're out. We're free. And you're starting to like, we're good. And then you the more therapy I do, the more I realize, my past does play a part of my present. And I do have to deal with it. It doesn't mean I have to stay in this angry place. It doesn't mean I'm, out to get anyone, but it still makes a difference and it still impacts my life today. And if I ignore that, it's going to still be in there. So I love seeing stories like yours that you've gotten the help you've needed, and now you in turn are helping others. That just like makes my heart so happy.
Well, and again, like I also feel like in my classroom, I'm a very open person with my students. I will say to them like, hey, Miss Pitts struggles with depression. I have ADHD. I take medicine. I do. And so when those kids who have to go take their medicine, I'll say, hey, I understand. Don't worry about it. Like, and I'll tell them on days, hey, I didn't have my medicine today, so I'm going to need extra help because this is how I feel, or this is what's going to look like. And they all get it and they don't care. And to normalize needing help is so important. And and not everyone agrees with doing that, and that's okay. But for me in my room, I've seen the benefit of making sure the students feel that it's not weird to have something that you have to get help with. It's not weird to have depression. It's not weird to have scars on your arms. Like I have scars on my arms, and I don't care if they ask. I tell them, yep, I was in a really bad place and I felt out of control and I didn't go to someone for help. And so I had to express myself in ways that were unhealthy. I said, that's why it's important to find your safe people, whoever it is, your safe people. And if it's me, I will be happy to help you. If it's not me, I'll help you find someone. And they feel like that's a place they can talk to. And I think that's what is going to make a difference in accepting mental health and helping people work through mental health is someone coming alongside and saying, this is okay. Like our future generations are going to be better if we say this, if we talk to them about it. Absolutely. And even if you're like, nothing traumatic happened in your life. That's some of the biggest things that people say. You're fine. Nothing happened to you. No, incorrect. Like you can't, it also could just be a neurological issue that they need help with. It doesn't have to be a huge traumatic event. Exactly. If you're feeling depressed or you're feeling in a bad place, you just get help. Just like if you fall and you break your leg, you go to the doctor and you get a cast. It's the same thing. And it's okay. There's no shame in it.
Right. And I love that what you're saying about the doctor, because I've heard that analogy many times and it's so true. And I know like our family, we definitely have a lot of mental health situations in our family. And I'm on medication and it has been a good experience for me. Like you were saying, just to be able to relate, like when I look back, I am absolutely positive I was depressed my entire life. Like I feel like when I picture my little Shani self, I was a depressed child. I 100% was. I was very, very, very confused child. And so now, you know, in the last 3 years or so, when I finally am taking the steps, I was getting therapy, but it wasn't real consistent. And then finally I'm like, okay, I got to do something.
Right.
And I really did get to kind of that breaking point of like being lost, being very lost. And so that's when it, you know, I went to the doctor, started the consistent therapy, and I did have to go on medication, but one of our kids is on medication. So it was perfect. It was like, hey, look, we both take our medication. It's not a big deal. And we talk about a lot in our family too, because again, it's like opposite of how we were raised, where all the subjects, and I think kids need to be aware, like we have a middle schooler who just graduated today.
Yay!
Actually.
I love middle school.
We made it. Well,
8th graders are my favorite. That's my favorite grade to teach. Anyways, I'm just saying.
So what are you doing over the summer?
Exactly. Oh, I love it.
Oh my gosh. But he, you know, so the issues that these kids in middle school are seeing on a daily basis blows my mind. So if we're not openly talking at every opportunity that we can with our kids, we're going to lose them.
Yeah.
And I just feel like it has been so, and again, this is learning from our past and how we were raised. And like you were saying with your sisters and all your nieces, turning that around, flipping it around to like, hey, mommy had some eating disorders. Mommy is on medication. Mommy should have been on medication a lot sooner. Like all these things, and use them, use it to help. And I just love what you've done that at a whole nother level, because you're doing it with your students. And I just, I think that's so valuable. And from a mom perspective, I wish that my kids were going to your school, because I have 2 teacher relationships that were so impactful in my life, because my sisters and I did go to public school, but I was very heavily bullied because we were very odd people.
Of course.
And I had one teacher in elementary school and one teacher in high school who I just ran into today at my son's graduation. Like I'm going to contact her as soon as we're done here. Like, I'm so excited. But they impacted my life in the most profound way. I will never forget the 2 of them. And so don't ever keep doing what you're doing, because to look at 41, to look back and very clearly, I can remember specific things that these teachers said to me that truly changed my life. And in those moments of being bullied, I mean, all through school was not fun. Those 2 teachers were the ones that like kept me going, because I just felt like they cared about me truly. And so you're doing amazing. And you may never know, know how you impact these kids, but keep doing what you're doing, because let me tell you, like, I mean, you know, you were a kid too, but people say things or can act a certain way, and it really can impact us for the rest of our life. So
for sure. Yeah, I agree. I see it daily, where you can tell that that's just kids are not being properly like shown how to handle emotions and to be okay with emotions. And that's a huge deal as they're developing. And I always say to them, hey, like, I'll say something and they don't like what I've said, or they don't like the consequence that comes from something that they did. I always say, hey, if at any point you feel angry at me, it's okay to say that. Like, hey, I'm angry at you. Okay. And that's okay. I want you to feel that it's okay to say it too. It's okay to say it, because I think it's important that you teach that if those emotions are properly taken care of, the other part of the mental health is going to be less impactful if they understand how to communicate with their emotions. And that's something that I didn't have, that I'm like, oh my goodness, I have to give this to them. And I literally will say, you can say, you know what? I don't want to talk to you right now. I'm not happy with you right now. I need time, and I will give it to you. And I will say, when you're ready, come back and check back in, or I can check back in. Or if they're having a whole entire meltdown fit, and it happens all the time. I say to them, hey, I can see you're having a hard time right now. When you're done, you're welcome to come talk to me if you need someone to talk to about it. And then we just move on. I keep going about my life. I'm not going to stand over you and try to get you in whatever place I need you in. Like, fine, have your moment. We all have it. As an adult, I have it
Yes.
constantly, but I'm allowed to have
Right.
mine because I handle it differently, right?
Right. No,
And I
it's
tell
so
them,
true.
I'm mad sometimes. And I say, I'm really angry right now. And I actually think I need space from you because I might get fired if I continue to talk with you.
Yes.
Or it might be bad for you. And I don't want that. So I need some
Yes.
space,
Right.
please. Just for a little while. Yeah. But I think it's important. I think emotions are a huge part of mental health. And I think now learning how to better communicate helps me do better with teaching the next generation to be able to communicate.
Absolutely.
Which we hope to have a better generation than ours.
Oh my gosh.
That's for sure.
Wouldn't that be wonderful?
Wouldn't it?
Oh my gosh. I sure. Yeah. Well, you're definitely doing your part. And I love seeing that. I think that's, you probably are a very important person to a lot of those kids, even though you don't realize it. What grade are you teaching right now?
So I'm actually right now in elementary. I teach kindergarten through 5th because I'm a STEM teacher and also a gifted teacher. So I do both. You'll have to watch my video because you can see a little glimpse of what I do. But I feel like I'm the luckiest of all because I get to do all the fun things, and B, I get to be that person they want to come to at all times.
Yes.
I actually feel so excited because I'm part of the rotation for specials, and they always wanted to go to PE all the time. Always PE, PE, PE. Oh, we don't have PE. And then suddenly it was like, oh, hey, we get to go to STEM. And they would come running in, and I was like, oh, I succeeded.
Yeah.
I beat PE. Once you beat PE as an educator, you've won. There's nothing higher than that.
Oh, that is so awesome.
He loves it too because he's like, oh, thank goodness, that's someone else they want to go to because it's exhausting. I was like, I know, but I love it. I love what I do, and I get to let them get messy and fail, and that's my favorite. Failing is so. I use that every day. Let's fail. Who wants to fail today? I do. Let's do it. Because it's so exciting to see the failure and know, okay, I know what I did right and what I did wrong. Let's do it again.
Right. And learn
so
from it.
That's my privilege for sure.
I
love it.
That is so incredible.
Yeah.
Well, I can't thank you enough for coming and having this conversation.
Thanks for having me.
This has been so amazing. Why don't you go ahead then and share with the audience where they can find you if they would like to chat with you or get more information.
You can find me with Twitter, it's Chauntee. So my first name, it's CHAUNTEE 86. That's me on Twitter. Instagram is chauntee.pitts.
Okay.
Yeah.
Perfect.
Yeah. Just my first name dot my last name.
Then I have a couple of little quick questions at the end. Do you have a book that you love that you would recommend to listeners?
My favorite book is To Kill a Mockingbird. It's my all-time go-to for everything. That's a big, impactful book for me. I read it multiple times. It's my favorite.
Great.
Yeah.
That's a good one. Okay, good. Thank you. And then, this is a good one. What is the best compliment that you've ever received?
I would say it was from a student. It's one that I literally have to go to all the time in my head because it's one that makes me feel warm and fuzzy inside. But he was asked something about me, and he said, I love Miss Pitts because she makes me feel like I belong somewhere. And that was the only thing that matters to me. Like, if that's all I do in my life, I will keep it forever. That's it.
Yes. Oh my gosh. That just is proof right there that the impact that you're making. So
it got me so emotional every time I think about it. So but I love it. That's a compliment beyond compliments. So
yes. Oh yeah. You hold that one dear to your heart and never let that one go. That's such
absolutely
that's beautiful. Oh, I love it. Well, thank you so much again for hanging out with me. We definitely are going to have to do this again because it was so much fun.
I enjoyed it. It's fun to actually get to talk with you because I feel like I get to see you on everything, but
I know.
I hope you enjoyed my conversation with Chauntee. This woman is so inspiring to me. It is so fun to see how happy she is in her life now after enduring some tough times over the years and in her childhood and her youth. And it just makes me so proud to see people like her who overcome really tough situations and really turn it around and do something with their life. And it just makes my heart so happy because she truly is so happy and just really giving back to the community, her community, in such a neat way. So check out my show notes to find out more information about her. You can also see the video there where she received her Teacher of the District Award this last school year. And you can find out more about me on Official Chauntee Pants on Instagram and TikTok. You can also find all my information on chanteepantshow.com. I really appreciate you guys supporting me and sending me good information. You guys have been sending me some amazing recommendations for guests. So we have a great season ahead of us, and I'm really looking forward to getting the rest of these interviews out to you guys. Please continue to like, subscribe, share the podcast, leave me some reviews. All of those things really help me out. So I hope you guys have an amazing week, and I'll be here again next week.
Don't ever silence your voice.